The air in Babylon was thick with the scent of incense and the murmur of foreign tongues. Daniel, a young Hebrew with piercing eyes and a quiet demeanor, stood in the shadow of the great ziggurat, its towering steps reaching toward the heavens like a ladder to the gods. He was far from home, a captive in a land that worshipped idols and whispered secrets of ancient mysteries. But tonight, the gods of Babylon would not claim his dreams. It began with a tremor in his chest, a vibration that seemed to come from the stars themselves. As he lay on his mat, the walls of his chamber dissolved, and he was pulled into a vision so vivid it felt more real than the ground beneath him. Before him stretched a vast plain, where a colossal statue rose from the earth. Its head gleamed with gold, its chest and arms were silver, its belly and thighs bronze, its legs iron, and its feet a brittle mix of iron and clay. It was a monument to power, to empires, to the pride of kings. But as Daniel stared, a stone, uncut by human hands, came hurtling from the heavens. It struck the statue's feet, and the entire structure crumbled into dust, carried away by the wind until not a trace remained. Daniel awoke gasping, his heart pounding like a war drum. He knew this was no ordinary dream. It was a message, a riddle wrapped in the language of symbols. But what did it mean? The next morning, the royal summons came. King Nebuchadnezzar had dreamed a dream, and no one in his court could interpret it. The king, enraged by their failure, had ordered the execution of all his wise men. Daniel, though a captive, was among them. As he stood before the king, Daniel felt the weight of the moment. This was not just about saving his life. It was about uncovering a truth hidden in the fabric of the cosmos. He closed his eyes, seeking the divine wisdom he had always felt stirring within him. "Your dream, O king," Daniel began, his voice steady, "reveals the rise and fall of empires. The golden head is your kingdom, mighty and glorious. But after you, another will rise inferior to yours, and then another, and another, until the final kingdom, divided and fragile, like iron mixed with clay. Yet, in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed. It will shatter all others and stand forever." The king leaned forward, his eyes wide with awe. "How can this be?" he whispered. Daniel hesitated, then spoke with a conviction that surprised even himself. "The stone, uncut by human hands, represents a truth that comes not from man, but from the divine. It is the awakening of the spirit, the revelation that all earthly power is an illusion. Only the eternal remains." Nebuchadnezzar fell silent, his face a mask of wonder and fear. Daniel, though honored by the king, felt a deeper unease. He had glimpsed something far greater than the rise and fall of empires. He had seen the fragility of the material world and enduring power of the spiritual. That night, as the stars burned brightly over Babylon, Daniel sat alone in his chamber. The vision of the statue haunted him, but it was the stone that held his thoughts. It was not just a symbol of divine intervention. It was a call to something deeper, a journey into the mysteries of the soul. He closed his eyes and whispered a prayer, not to the gods of Babylon, but to the God of his fathers, the source of all wisdom. "Show me the way," he pleaded. "Unveil the secrets hidden in the shadows." And as he drifted into sleep, the stars seemed to pulse in response, as if the heavens themselves were waiting to reveal their darkest prophecies. The dreams returned, fiercer this time. Daniel found himself standing on a wind-swept shore, the air thick with the scent of salt and decay. Before him, the sea churned violently, its waves crashing like the roars of 1,000 beasts. He felt the ground tremble beneath his feet as something monstrous began to emerge from the depths. First came a lion with the wings of an eagle, its golden mane glinting in the dim light. But as Daniel watched, its wings were torn off, and it was lifted from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man. Then a bear appeared, lumbering and savage, with 3 ribs clenched between its teeth. Next, a leopard, sleek and swift, with 4 wings and 4 heads, each more terrifying than the last. But was the 4th beast that froze Daniel's blood. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, a creature of nightmares, with iron teeth and 10 horns. It devoured and crushed everything in its path. And as Daniel stared, a smaller horn sprouted among the others, with eyes like a man and a mouth that spoke boastfully. The vision shifted, and Daniel found himself before a throne of fire. Its flames burned with a purity that both terrified and comforted him. Seated on the throne was an ancient figure, his clothing white as snow, his hair like pure wool. The throne was surrounded by countless beings, their voices rising in a chorus that shook the heavens. The beasts you have seen, a voice thundered, are kingdoms that will rise from the earth. But their power is fleeting, for the Ancient of Days will judge them, and their dominion will be taken away. Daniel awoke drenched in sweat, his heart racing. The images were seared into his mind, each detail vivid and alive. He knew this was no ordinary dream. It was a glimpse into the very fabric of creation, a revelation of the forces that shaped the world and the soul. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel could not shake the vision. He spent hours in prayer and meditation, seeking to understand its meaning. The beasts, he realized, were not just symbols of earthly kingdoms. They were manifestations of the chaos within the human heart. The lion, the bear, the leopard, they represented pride, greed, and violence, the passions that ruled the world. But the 4th beast, with its iron teeth and boastful horn, was something darker. It was the ego, the part of the soul that rebelled against the divine, that sought to dominate and destroy. One night, as Daniel sat alone in his chamber, a figure appeared before him. It was not a man nor an angel, but something in between, a being of light and shadow, with eyes that burned like stars. "You have seen the beasts," the figure said, its voice echoing in Daniel's mind. "But do you understand their true nature?" Daniel shook his head. "They are kingdoms, yes, but also something more. They are within us." The figure nodded. "The battle you witnessed is not just in the world. It is in the soul. The beasts are the shadows that dwell in the hearts of men, the forces that seek to keep the spirit bound to the material. But the throne of fire, the Ancient of Days, is the light within you, the divine spark that cannot be extinguished." Daniel felt a surge of hope, but it was quickly tempered by fear. "How can I overcome them? The beasts, they are too powerful." The figure leaned closer, its gaze piercing. "You must face them, not with sword or shield, but with knowledge. The gnosis, the divine wisdom, is your weapon. Seek it, and you will find the path to liberation." As the figure faded, Daniel was left with a sense of purpose. He knew now that his visions were not just warnings, they were a call to action. The beasts were real, both in the world and within himself, and he would have to confront them if he was to fulfill his destiny. But as he lay down to sleep, a new thought crept into his mind. The smaller horn, the one that spoke boastfully, what did it represent? And why did it fill him with such dread? The days grew darker in Babylon. Rumors spread of unrest in the provinces, of kingdoms rising and falling like waves in a storm. Daniel, now a trusted advisor to the king, felt the weight of the world pressing down on him. His visions had not ceased. If anything, they had grown more intense, more urgent. One night, as he knelt in prayer, a new vision seized him. He saw a temple, grand and majestic, its walls gleaming with gold and precious stones. But as he watched, a figure entered the sanctuary, a man with cold eyes and a cruel smile. He carried an idol, a grotesque thing of stone and metal, and placed it on the altar. The air grew heavy, and a voice echoed through the temple. "This is the abomination that causes desolation." Daniel awoke with a start, his heart pounding. The image of the idol haunted him, its presence lingering like a shadow. He knew this was no ordinary vision. It was a warning, a glimpse of a future where the sacred was defiled and the divine was forgotten. As he pondered the vision, a messenger arrived with news from Jerusalem. The temple, the holy house of God, had been desecrated. A foreign king had entered its courts, erected an idol, and sacrificed unclean animals on the altar. The people were in despair, their faith shaken to its core. Daniel felt a surge of anger and sorrow, but beneath it, a deeper understanding began to take shape. The abomination was not just an act of sacrilege. It was a symbol of the soul's separation from the divine. The temple was not just a building. It was the human heart, the inner sanctuary where the spirit dwelled. And the idol, the abomination, was the ego, the false self that sought to replace the true God. Determined to uncover the full meaning of the vision, Daniel turned to the sacred texts. He studied the prophecies, the codes hidden within the words, seeking the key to the mystery. One passage in particular caught his attention, the prophecy of the 70 weeks. 70 weeks are decreed for your people and your holy city, the text read, to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for wickedness, to bring in everlasting righteousness. Daniel felt a spark of recognition. The 70 weeks were not just a measure of time. They were a map, a guide to the soul's journey toward enlightenment. Each week represented a stage in the process of purification, a step on the path to gnosis. But there was more. The prophecy spoke of a ruler who will come and establish a covenant, only to break it and set up the abomination. Daniel realized this was not just a historical figure. It was a symbol of the forces that sought to lead humanity astray, to keep the soul bound to the material world. As he delved deeper, Daniel began to see the connections. The abomination, the 70 weeks, the beasts, they were all part of a greater pattern, a cosmic drama playing out on the stage of history and within the human soul. The battle was not just between kingdoms. It was between light and darkness, truth and illusion. One night, as he meditated on these truths, the figure from his earlier vision returned. Its presence was both comforting and unsettling, a reminder of the stakes at hand. "You have begun to understand," the figure said, "but the path ahead is fraught with peril. The abomination is not just in the world, it is within you. To overcome it, you must face your own shadows, your own illusions." Daniel nodded, his resolve hardening. He knew what he had to do. The journey would not be easy, but it was necessary. The fate of his people, the fate of his soul, depended on it. As the figure faded, Daniel felt a strange sense of peace. The road ahead was uncertain, but he was no longer afraid. He had glimpsed the truth, and it had set him free. But even as he prepared for the challenges to come, a question lingered in his mind. What would he find at the end of the 70 weeks? And would he be ready to face it? The air in Daniel's chamber was heavy, almost suffocating, as if the walls themselves were closing in. He had been fasting for days, seeking clarity, seeking answers. The visions had become more frequent, more intense, and he could no longer ignore the urgency they carried. It was during one of these moments of deep meditation that the vision came, a vision unlike any he had seen before. Daniel found himself standing in a vast, starless void. Above him, the heavens were alive with movement, as if the very fabric of reality was being torn apart. Two armies clashed in the darkness, their forms shifting and indistinct. One was radiant, their light piercing the void like shards of the sun. The other was shrouded in shadow, their presence a void within the void. At the center of the chaos stood a figure, tall and commanding, his armor gleaming with celestial fire. It was Michael, the Archangel, his sword raised high as he faced a monstrous being with eyes like burning coals and a voice that shook the heavens. "You cannot win," the dark figure hissed, its words dripping with malice. "The world is mine, and the souls of men belong to me." Michael's voice was calm but unyielding. "The light cannot be extinguished, nor the spirit bound. The Ancient of Days has decreed it." Daniel watched in awe as the battle raged, each strike of Michael's sword sending ripples through the void. But this was no ordinary conflict. It was a battle for the very soul of creation. The forces of light sought to liberate, to illuminate, while the forces of darkness sought to enslave, to obscure. As the vision unfolded, Daniel realized he was not merely an observer. He was a part of this battle, his own soul a battlefield where light and darkness waged war. The beasts from his earlier visions, the lion, the bear, the leopard, the terrible fourth beast, were not just symbols of earthly kingdoms. They were the manifestations of his own fears, his own doubts, his own ego. The smaller horn, the one that spoke boastfully, rose again in his mind. It was the voice of his own pride, his own desire for control. It was the abomination within him, the idol he had erected in the temple of his heart. The vision shifted, and Daniel was back in his chamber, the echoes of the battle still ringing in his ears. He felt a profound sense of exhaustion, as if he had fought the battle himself. But beneath the weariness, there was a spark of hope. He had seen the truth. The battle was not just in the heavens or on the earth. It was within him. And if he could overcome the darkness within, he could help others do the same. That night, as he lay on his mat, Daniel prayed for guidance. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, but he also knew he was not alone. The Archangel Michael, the Ancient of Days, the divine spark within him, they were all with him, guiding him, strengthening him. But even as he drifted into sleep, a new vision came, one that filled him with both dread and anticipation. He saw a figure, cloaked in light, standing at the edge of time. The figure turned to him and spoke, its voice echoing through the ages. The end is not the end, but the beginning. The darkness will rise, but the light will prevail. Prepare yourself, for the final revelation is near. Daniel awoke with a start, his heart pounding. The words lingered in his mind, a promise and a warning. He knew now that his journey was far from over. The final chapter of the prophecy was yet to be revealed, and it would demand everything he had. But he was ready. The final vision came on a night when the stars seemed to burn brighter than ever, as if the heavens themselves were holding their breath. Daniel felt it before he saw it, a pull in his chest, a vibration in the air, as if the fabric of reality was thinning. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them, he was no longer in Babylon. He stood on a mountaintop, the wind whipping around him, carrying whispers of ancient truths. Before him stretched a vast expanse of time, past, present, and future merging into a single, infinite moment. He saw empires rise and fall, kingdoms crumble into dust, and new worlds born from their ashes. But amidst the chaos, a thread of light persisted, unbroken and eternal. A voice spoke, not from around him, but from within him, deep and resonant. Daniel, servant of the Most High, you have sought the truth with a pure heart. Now, the final mystery will be revealed to you. The scene shifted, and Daniel found himself in a garden, lush and vibrant, unlike anything he had ever seen. At its center stood a tree, its branches reaching toward the heavens, its roots delving deep into the earth. Its leaves shimmered with a light that seemed to come from within, and its fruit glowed like stars. This is the tree of life, the voice said. It is the source of all wisdom, the bridge between the material and the divine. Its roots are in the earth, but its branches touch the heavens. It is within you, as it is within all things. Daniel reached out, and as his hand touched the tree, a flood of knowledge poured into him. He saw the interconnectedness of all things, the unity of creation, and the divine spark that dwelled within every soul. He understood now that the beasts, the abomination, the battles, they were all part of a greater story, a cosmic dance of light and shadow. The voice continued, the end is not the end, but a new beginning. The darkness will rise, but it cannot extinguish the light. The stone uncut by human hands will shatter the illusions of the world, and the kingdom of the Spirit will be revealed. Daniel felt a surge of hope, but also a profound sense of responsibility. He knew now that his role was not just to interpret the visions, but to live them, to embody the truth they revealed. The battle was not just in the heavens or on the earth. It was within him, and within every soul. As the vision faded, Daniel found himself back in his chamber, the first light of dawn creeping through the window. He felt a deep sense of peace, but also a quiet determination. The journey was far from over, but he now had the tools to navigate it. He took out a scroll and began to write, his hand moving swiftly as he recorded the visions and their meanings. He knew these words would be sealed, hidden away until the time was right. But he also knew they would one day be revealed, a beacon of hope for those who sought the truth. As he finished, a thought occurred to him, one that brought a smile to his lips. The final revelation was not just for him, it was for all of humanity. The path to gnosis, to the knowledge of the divine, was open to anyone who sought it with a pure heart. Daniel set down the scroll and looked out at the rising sun. The world was still full of darkness, but he knew the light would prevail. The stone had been cast, the beasts would fall, and the kingdom of the Spirit would endure. And as the first rays of sunlight touched his face, Daniel whispered a prayer of gratitude, not just for the visions, but for the journey they had set him on. The end was not the end. It was the beginning,